Awesome. Hey everyone, thanks for joining today's session. My name is Marco Aguirre. I'm the Research Director at CoveTool, and I'll be hosting today's webinar. For today's topic, we're going to be covering creating custom graphics with CoveTool. So I'm just going to give you a quick presentation on some of the introductions, how to set up a presentation, information you need to know about making it a repeatable process, and then going through some of the graphics, case studies that we have in CoveTool that kind of best illustrates a lot of those examples. If you guys have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to drop them into the chat box below. And also, if you would like a copy of the presentation, please reach out to a sales executive or customer success representative for your firm, and we'll get that information over to you. This session will be recorded and we will post it on the website, so you can always rewatch it or share it with anybody else on your team. And yeah, with that said, let's spend the next 30 minutes going through this topic. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you guys have any issues hearing me, anything else like that. Otherwise, I'll keep going. Awesome. So here's our slide deck. Here's a quick little agenda. So we're going to go again through an introduction of setting up a presentation, what we're doing within CoveTool, the types of graphics that are possible, how to connect some of those concepts to the information that you generate from CoveTool. And then finally, we have a case study that we think illustrates this well. At the end of the session, I will open up the last 5 minutes. And if we go over, I'll also stay on to make sure we can answer anybody's questions about any of the content that we cover. So how can CoveTool help generating a custom presentation? Well, we have a lot of different graphics and reports that we've generated through CoveTool that we've curated and designed to make sure that whatever concept we're trying to illustrate is useful for making a decision on the project. There's a lot of different graphics, diagrams, help text, and additional resources that you can find within our help center that can hopefully convey a lot of the ideas that we've built into the platform. Building science isn't rocket science, and hopefully the kinds of images and other media that you can generate from CoveTool can best illustrate that. And depending on what's the scope of the project, what kind of stories you're trying to tell, or what decision you're trying to help make with your presentation, CoveTool can help you provide that storyline. And if you check out our case studies, you can see various different ways of how folks have used the CoveTool graphics and everything else that you can generate within the platform to showcase different types of projects, whether it's pursuing net zero, renovating a project, figuring out like how to actually win a project, things like that. So we have a lot of great examples. I grabbed 2 really great slides that we found in the Technology, Culture, and Future of the Architecture Firm survey, which is a document that was published earlier this year by the AIA. And it just showcased in information that they gathered the last year, what are some of the key things that are helping increase firms' profitability. One of the things that was helping expand in business growth, or one of the things they identified, was ways folks are trying to expand business growth is trying to figure out how they can get more clients and win more projects. The key things that firms are currently investing in and to be more proactive with business growth is figuring out better ways to get outbound folks looking at their project, and mostly through digital marketing. So that's going to be a little bit of what we're talking about within CoveTool. And we really want to make sure that you're not only using the graphics and ideas that we present later in this presentation to improve your PowerPoints, things like that, but also we want to see some of this happen on your website and the types of services you offer and how you're pursuing clients and projects moving forward. Another great slide from the same survey from the AIA showcased the 2 biggest indicators for profitability and efficiency were firms who could showcase strong project management skills and also showcase real-time insights. CoveTool really focuses on that real-time insights part. So every time you have an idea, you're working through iterations, you're trying to identify what it is that you want to showcase. Hopefully CoveTool has the media graphics results that you need to show in order to have that as a service that you can provide. So getting back to the idea of putting together a presentation, how do you approach this? So of course, you want to frame your story, identify who your audience is, what do they care about, what information do they need to know in order for them to make a decision or to understand the story or choose you for the presentation. It really depends what you're approaching it. You want to make sure you plan a delivery that best fits all of those ideas. Of course, you'll generate that content. We're going to talk a little bit more about that next, and then also make sure that this is a process that you can repeat moving forward. The repeatable process is one of the top questions that we get from firms that are starting to use Cove Tool and trying to identify what their presentation process looks like. So one of the things you really need to do and identify is just make sure that this is a process that can be documented, that every objective within a presentation is clear, and that you standardize the order of how the presentation should be put together. If there's any issues with standardizing presentations in the past, making sure that you can identify what some of the biggest struggles have been, and if we can simplify that process, are all great tips to making this a repeatable process. And then finally, you also want to make sure that you have a graphic standard. Most architecture firms, they have a pretty strong brand identity. They know the colors they'll use, the text, the fonts, what kind of images they're trying to generate. But the more you can standardize this, if this is something that you're already accomplishing, the more effective your presentations will be. So just some of those concepts as a refresher here before we go into the actual media. So the types of presentation graphics that Cove Tool can generate. So there's a lot of different possibilities within Cove Tool. A lot of it is going to be visual graphics like snapshots, GIFs, graphs, diagrams, charts. But as you start to process that information and you generate more detailed graphics, you're using things like Photoshop, PowerPoint, other photo or image editing software, the more detailed that image or diagram can be, more effective communicator to the ideas you're trying to convey to your audience. We'll start off with some of the more simple graphics that you can generate. So of course, snapshots is one of the easiest tools that you can use. Snapshots are things like screen grabs, image exports. Here's a quick image. This is a healthcare project in Paris. All we did was, of course, import the building geometry from one of the plugins, set our building location, and with an API connection we have to OpenStreetMaps, we can immediately generate the site. With the 3D analysis, that's probably one of our more visually striking tools. You can generate a lot of different content. Here's the 8 different 3D analysis that you get. You get daylight, glare, quality views, COVID analysis, shadow studies. These are snapshots of a tower project that was going to be in Atlanta. I think it was for a competition, but you can see some of the images are useful. And of course, you can always go, this is a starting point to show some of the graphics you can make. But as you go through your own presentation, you can go analysis by analysis, actually break down what they represent, showing the legends, the north arrows, things like that, to communicate what's actually happening in the building. One of the tools that we have to make this a little bit easier is the snapshot feature. On the top right-hand corner of the 3D analysis page, you're going to see this little camera icon where you have this arrow over here. That's going to help you download a high-resolution PNG of your screen. The bigger the screen, that tends to allow for higher quality, and it's just slightly better than a screenshot. So of course you can take whatever images you want, pan to the angle you're trying to get, export that image out, and then start using it for your presentation. And I already mentioned this, but the context is one of the really great features. It's not something that you have to build. We automatically generate it. We can cite your building. And then you can showcase some of the different scenarios or how context might influence your building design, how it's going to impact citing, things like that. So different ways to showcase that information. So here you can see the building in plan, the building and kind of the skyline view, and then showing the actual project among the building. So this is a stadium that was going to be in Southwest Atlanta. That's again that tower project, showcasing them in different angles. Another type of media you can create, of course, are GIFs. GIFs are just, I'm not even sure what the file type is, but just images that record changes within over time. So just showing you a shadow study and a quick pan around the site. Additional GIFs moving around your building, showcasing a facade study strategy and how that's going to affect the daylight access within a typical room. The tool that we recommend for folks to use is a free to download plugin called Screen to GIF. It's something that anybody can download, and it also has a built-in editing platform. So if you are recording different images within the analysis and you want to showcase what happens with the shadow study or how the context is going to impact your building, this allows you to record your screen, and then within the platform you can also cut, paste, edit, resize, speed up different processes. And if you are signed up for the Cove Tool newsletter, every week we try to, or every other week, we try to generate new GIFs to get folks excited. This is the tool we use. So just always want to highlight things we're currently using. Other types of media that you can generate, of course, are charts and graphs. We have them kind of displayed on all the analysis page. You'll see things like benchmarking, breakdowns, pie charts, or bar charts, and then pie charts, showcasing information, where it's coming from, what it represents. Another great graphic, of course, is the comparison tool. So this is a GIF kind of showcasing how you generate a comparison tool. As you have multiple projects or iterations of a single design, you can checkbox them on the project page, click the compare button, and then you're going to see a side-by-side report showcasing different metrics. And based on what metrics you are looking for, or if you want to showcase all that information to your client, you can help choose which project you're going to further develop. There's a couple of different types of comparisons that are possible within Cove Tool. I showed you a second ago the EUI comparison, so energy performance and some other metrics. But you can also do that for a more traditional shadow study where you show seasonal shadow casts through the shadow tool. You could do daylight versus energy comparison. The facade optimization tool is another great graphic to generate and just showcases based on different facade configurations. Like if you're looking at fins versus overhangs, 6-inch, 12-inch, 18-inch, different spacings, how that's going to affect building performance. And then you can put occupants, edit the image to add occupants to showcase what that actually represents in real life, just to make some of these concepts a bit more tangible. There's a lot of other types of graphics. So I think a lot of folks tend to think that Cove Tool is only really applicable to new construction for larger commercial projects. But there's a lot of different possibilities that can be generated. So there's a whole case study in our help center about master planning design, how to generate graphics for multiple buildings at one time, and how you can add more specific build information for each of them. So there's a whole case study. I'm making a presentation for that. Renovations, projects, addition projects, showcasing east versus, or I think it's, what is it? Usually says up here, but it's like north versus east addition, which option was going to be more efficient and provide all of the other features they were looking for. System type comparison. So if you have an idea for a building, but you want to start exploring different technology options, that's also something you can do in the comparison report, and showcasing the actual systems that are going into your building can help explain to the client, like, what are they looking at? What actually does that represent? And then you can show the energy consumption and also the utility costs. So you can make decisions there. And of course, 3D analysis, again, showcasing before and after, alternative angles, how your building's going to have different scenarios happen or apply to it. There's a lot of different ways to customize graphics. A lot of the Cove Tool users always does post-production on the information that we generate. The most popular tool, of course, is always going to be Photoshop and Illustrator from Adobe. So here's a little snapshot of tutorial tips that we have in the Help Center of how to create certain graphics. For example, how to explain the 3D analysis. You set up the 3D analysis, you get the angles, you can toggle different elements to just get the information you're looking for, drop them into whatever photo or image editing software you use, and then apply text, analysis, diagrams to showcase what does that actually represent for a client, how's that going to affect the occupant experience, things like that. Here's some of those examples a bit more zoomed in. Yeah. And of course, the more information that you can generate, the more different iterations you can showcase, compare them side by side. So we're starting to pull together a lot of the information we just talked about. So here's an example from one of our case studies of a smart report where we showcase this is the room we're looking at. It's in the southeast direction. We're trying to figure out a better way to shade that space. So we're looking for some sort of shading strategies. So we brought that into the facade tool. We had a couple of different options. So we had 100% window to wall ratio facade, curtain wall. And then we're looking at adding frit and overhang, frit top and bottom, different percentage coverage of frits. All right, that's 50% frit, whole facade, 3-foot overhang, 2-foot overhang, and then 2-foot overhang with a lower overhang as well. And then based on those different shading configurations, how much STA were we getting in each of those spaces? And also, was that mitigating any amount of glare with that lower analysis? Matrix graphics, that's just a way to, again, just to show a lot of different information at once. So here's another angle looking at a traditional shadow study. So overlaying all the shadows being casted for your project. How is that going to impact the context? What does that actually look like? So that's the same as that massing comparison study I showed earlier. Here's another type of matrix. So this is one that was submitted, or one that was shared with us from the EUA architecture firm. It was looking at placing or exploring different orientations for the exact same building. And also exploring this building in different locations. So what was going to be the most efficient facade strategy, shading strategy, some of the different system strategies within the building, and then how did orientation kind of impact those factors. And this is a typology that is super common at their firm. So it was something that was going to be replicated often. And if they could figure out like a through line as the most efficient option orientation, then it could be something they could replicate at multiple offices or multiple projects. Here's another one. This is from a competition entry. So again, just looking at a large array of different facade options, window to wall ratios, different orientations, trying to identify what was going to be the most efficient. Looking at 2 different locations. So all of this is something that you can really quickly iterate through within CoveTool, get information on how that affects the performance. Smart diagrams, this is another type of post-processing kind of image you can generate. So this is really just using things like callouts, text to understand what's happening, how many options are we looking at. This starts to get a lot more complicated. So this is another, this is for a university project, Emory, the student learning, or the student something center. And just looking at all the different factors, how that impacted the cost, the performance, some of the project knowns, and then the actual project. Journey maps are another great way to showcase information, especially when you're looking at a performance model. So tracking throughout the life of the project, how different decisions impact building's performance as we're going from changing installation, editing schedules, altering lighting, so on, how that affected the EUY, and what their target was and where they would try to get to. Another type of journey map. So this is a renovation case study that we have in the Help Center. This is the Atlanta Central Library, which is actually right behind me in my video. This was looking at adding additional glazing to the south facade and what the additional STA would be and also recording like what the impact on energy would be like. So the 1980s design, and then the 2020 proposed renovation, and what the additional like SDA, or like when that space would be sufficiently naturally daylit, would look like. Here's another competition entry. So this one has a lot of post-processing. This is a student competition. This is the case study that we actually use for the massing or the campus project. So looking at generating different 3D analysis for the projects, benchmarking energy for each project and showcasing what the benchmark would be. So there's a building shape, and then this information would have been given to someone to further develop. Yeah, all that information they could generate. Another competition entry. So this is looking at 2 massing projects, and then based on different design decisions and material options that were selected for the project, how does that impact the building's design, and what kind of goals were we able to meet with different options? So CO2 reduction or carbon emissions reduction, that's a really great marketing measure that a lot of people kind of forget to generate from Gove Tool, and lead points, energy reduction, so on. Cool. So those were a lot of great graphics and case studies that you guys can all check out in our website. But some of the other things I want to talk about is just connecting concepts. So how do you actually communicate these ideas, showcase real-time insights, like what does it mean to leverage a green feature versus the other design features you're looking for. So as you're generating all these analysis, you can always showcase an EUI reduction, or showcase like how that certain design decision affected the various metrics of the project, but you always want to make sure that you make that tangible to the stakeholder. So when you're talking to a project owner, showcasing like, hey, this is actually a return on investment. These, as we lower your energy, or we look at different metrics within the building, this is about reducing operational costs, lower life cycle costs, knowing exactly what parts of the building do we want to invest in more, so we get the most bang out of our buck for the project, so on. Making sure that you can effectively communicate metrics and understand better what metrics you're tracking throughout the life of the project, highlighting some of the core concepts. So understanding what ECMs are, how ECMs are going to affect the project's costs, what options you want to further develop, things like that. Here's another graphic. So this is going from the climate report, and then showcasing like how do we take into account past strategies, and what does it look like when we incorporate past strategies with the building's operational costs. So this is a Korean case study looking at just the climate conditions and what the expected annual energy consumption was going to look like for any project built in that location. Yeah, understanding concepts like energy, what does it mean? What do we need to do for the building? What our project goals are? Always being able to convey why we're doing a certain analysis. What is the research tells us about incorporating analysis? Always just bringing it back to the value proposition of a project, and not just showcasing like, hey, we achieved this, but what does that actually represent? Daylight modeling, it's an important thing. One of the metrics and standards that we actually follow in order to run the daylight analysis are the same that you need in order to do a LEED compliant daylight model. And even though your project might not be pursuing LEED certification, it's always important to use a well daylight design as one of the building's like marketable features. So even though it's not getting a certification, you can still talk about how this well daylit space is going to improve productivity. It's a healthier place to occupy. There's a lot of different case studies showcasing the benefit of adding green features to a project and how that's going to impact the project's market value. So it can sell faster, lease faster, things like that. Quality views is another analysis that folks tend to forget about. So what does that analysis actually represent? How that's going to add additional comfort and value or to the occupants and then value to the building. Understanding the benefits and how to actually showcase like the difference between the analysis and the real world application, things like that. And of course, again, carbon is a metric we generate, but people don't necessarily effectively use or showcase what it means to make a more carbon efficient building and what the dangers are and how bad current carbon emitters, the code minimum compliant buildings are, and just showcasing some of that information. One of the cool things that you can do with the carbon emission metrics that we generate within Cove Tool is find online tools like the greenhouse gas equivalency calculator. This is a tool online from the Department of Energy. And you can take the information you generate from Cove Tool, enter it into their calculator, and then generate metrics like numbers of trees planted, gasolines consumed, homes powered per year, and just really give that type of narrative to your project. So really effective. And then for the last part of this presentation, we're about to be done. I just wanted to showcase a interesting case study. So this is one of the case studies that you'll see in one of our more recent ebooks. This is the Terra Nova Ranch. It was designed by Paul Halogen Architects. This is a project for a crops producer in California. And this is a crops producer that was always sustainability minded. They wanted to make sure that whatever crops they were planting was fit for the climate and also was seasonal, you know, all those things that were just making sure that they were sustainably farming. I don't know what the right word is for that. There's better language in the case study. So one of the things the clients weren't actually asking for any sort of sustainability within the building. They just hired architects to do this project, but the project or the architects were recently had bought Cove Tool, so they wanted to start integrating into their projects. So this is one of the first projects they use this with. So in the competition pursuit, they actually showcased a really effective way of how different targets that they could reach with Cove Tool on this project. They were awarded the project, and then once they got the project, they actually wanted to go a step further. So in this case study, it showcases how they were able to convince the client to go for a net zero building, even though it wasn't something they were asking for. So these are snapshots from the actual report and presentation they showcased. We just made it a little bit, edited it to fit the Cove Tool brand, but here you see the benchmarking information for the project. It was going to begin at a EUI of 45, so that's the Title 24 Energy Code baseline. You can see the national average baseline, which is 48 EUI, and the 2030 target, which is what we consider a high performance building. So they were significantly far from the 2030 target by just being a code compliant building within California. So that's their baseline, as well as just by being code compliant in California, their building already had a 12% reduction in carbon emissions. In order to make it a net zero carbon emissions building, they have to completely avoid or offset all the energy that their building is going to be using in order to operate. So those are the two numbers that we're tracking. So the strategies, they had a couple of strategies that they were looking at in order to make their building more efficient. So option number one was adding additional insulation into both the walls and the roof. So 2 inches additional ESP board, 3 inches additional in the roof. That immediately gave them a 5 EUI reduction, and then from 12% to 20% CO2 reduction. Option number two, additional or higher performance glazing. So they were looking at Solar Band 72. This wasn't going to be an incredibly expensive upgrade, and it didn't have as much return. So we just saw 1 EUI reduction and an additional 2% CO2 reduction. This is one of the options that the client decided not to go with. They kind of picked which ones made sense, which ones didn't. For option number 3, installing a PV system. 2,200 square feet of monocrystalline panels. This was a huge energy saver, dropped them an additional 30 EUI, got them up to 84% CO2 reductions. They did explore other options, but they kind of ran out of ideas and weren't able to get further into the net zero territory. So then they reached out to their engineers, and the engineers recommended a heat recovery system for the project. And with an additional, or with the upgrade of the HVAC system, they were able to reduce an additional 8.5 EUI that dropped them to net positive energy territory, and also pushed them over the edge to be net zero carbon emissions project. So with a couple of the examples we showed you, that's what they presented to the client. This was a presentation the client wasn't expecting. They just showcased it, illustrated it with Cove Tool, and they ended up going for it. And now the project is going to be the Paul Halogen's Architects' first net zero building. The client's all board for it. And of course, they also did 3D analysis, but not as important, but of course they use those metrics in the presentation as well. So yeah, that's everything I wanted to showcase today. Hopefully you have an idea of different ways to put together presentations, the kind of graphics you can make, highlighting the goal or the benefits of post-processing all that information. If there are any questions, comments, feel free to just drop them into the chat below. If we don't have any questions, next 2 minutes, I will end the presentation. But let me hop into the website. So while we wait for questions, see if they come in, I just wanted to show you some of the projects within Cove Tools. So here's a multi-tower building. This is on Emory University. This is northeast Atlanta. They're just thinking about different healthcare projects. Is that tower building or showcasing? Oh, this one's actually in San Francisco. I had a universe, or yeah, this K through 12 project in a suburb in Atlanta with the trees. This is one of the things that we're going to use as a shading strategy. So another thing you can do. Great. I don't see any questions. If you guys think of any other questions, always feel free to reach out to our support team. You can use that blue circle on the bottom right-hand corner to reach out to us. You can also search any of our help articles through that intercom feature. And then if you want to check out any of the case studies I mentioned today, they are all listed within the eBooks panels case studies article or page on the website. Great. Thanks everyone for joining today's session. I'm going to go ahead and call it a day. Have a great rest of your day. See y'all. Bye.